Welcome back. Concerns have been raised that millions of South African consumers' information may be compromised following a security breach by a Brazilian hacker group. N4NaughtySec-TU is holding the credit bureau TransUnion South Africa ransom and is demanding $15 million. The Information Regulator met with representatives from TransUnion earlier today to assess the matter and find possible solutions. Advocate Collen Weapond from the Information Regulator joins me now to tell us more about this. Thank you very much for your time this evening. How is it possible for such an organisation entrusted with vital, valuable information, financial information, to, in this day and age, still be hacked? What were the major outcomes from your discussion with TransUnion today?
Thank you so much, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, so we had a discussion today at 1 p.m. with the CEO and his team, as well as from our side, the chairperson, Advocate Bensi Tlakula, and led the delegation. I was also present at a meeting. What we actually discussed was what we can say the root cause of what we call a security compromise, which is a data breach, loosely pronounced. And what is very important to mention at this stage is that we specifically ask about the extent of the compromise. We also ask about the measures in the interim that TransUnion have put in place, and also discussed their letter that they've sent to the Information Regulator, as well as the regulator's direction with regards to specifics. The regulator also noted that their reporting was incomplete in terms of Section 22, specifically Section 22.4 and Section 22.5, which requires that data subjects must be notified, and also the manner in which data subjects are supposed to be notified of the data breach. You should remember that the regulator actually, to a large extent, represents and are concerned about the security of personal information that TransUnion hold of data subjects. And from that point, the regulator was able to have meaningful engagements with TransUnion.
So we know that TransUnion have said that they are not going to pay the ransom. And of course, there aren't just individual consumers who are involved here. There are also corporate clients involved. What level of liability do they have?
It's very important to stipulate that there are 8 conditions for the lawful processing of personal information that is entrusted to you, and all responsible parties, including Transnet, are supposed to comply with those 8 conditions, a failure which could result in the regulator actually investigating such a security compromise, which can result in what we would call a fine of up to 10 million or imprisonment of up to 10 years, or a combination of both, in terms of Sections 107 of the protection of personal information. What is also very important to note is that TransUnion has actually approached international negotiators to start to negotiate with the hackers, but also employed or approached international law enforcement agencies to assist them, because of the fact that these threat actors are outside of the Republic of South Africa, but it's also not 100% certain if they are indeed from Brazil or if they are on the South American continent or on the European continent, but the investigations are continuing. So the Information Regulator was informed, but very importantly, the Information Regulator also had constructive engagements to the extent that we agreed on a way forward, as was outlined by the chairperson of the Information Regulator, Advocate Bensi Tlakula.
So we know that South African banks have put in place robust mitigation strategies to detect and prevent fraud on individual and corporate accounts. Should such fraud still manage to take place, what recourse is there for consumers?
Basically, consumers or data subjects who are affected are allowed to lodge a complaint with the Information Regulator in terms of Section 74(2). But very importantly, there's also what we would call Section 99, where there can be civil litigation instituted. So those options are readily available to affected data subjects. But it's also very important to note what Mr. Manie van Schalkwyk has mentioned in his interview regarding an approach to fraud and also how fraud could take place with regards to the further abuse of data, and also alerted consumers to be aware of the various ways. And I think it was an interview that was conducted on eNCA as well.
Absolutely correct there. I think Mr. van Schalkwyk there encouraged consumers not to give out any information, even if it seems that the person calling them is from a trusted source. Just before I let you go, we know obviously that as technology advances, so do hackers and their capabilities of breaching security and cyber systems. How common are these incidents in South Africa, and where are we comparatively in terms of our cybersecurity systems and the safety of information?
Yes, so it's very important to understand that no system is foolproof, and what Section 19 actually requires from what I would say responsible parties in the main is that they must ensure that the integrity and confidentiality of their systems, they must then therefore put in place appropriate and reasonable technical and organizational measures. So those who then relate to your policies, your procedures, and your processes, but very importantly, on a technical side, your firewalls, your encryption, and a host of other technical measures. So that's what we require. But in a comparative bid, the regulator has not conducted a comparative study, but safe to say that in a lot of jurisdictions, there is a lot of, I can say, data breaches happening. We have, in the just recent past, engaged our counterparts in Canada, and we've also engaged our counterparts in Ireland, and they also informed us that there is a large volume of complaints or data breaches reported. But very importantly, in our context, we don't have a threshold. So if one person's personal information was compromised compared to thousands or millions, all of those are reportable because we don't have a threshold. And that then also could increase the number of reports that we receive. And that should be done in terms of Section 22(1) of the Protection of Personal Information Act.
Thank you very much for your insights and your time. That was Advocate Collen Weapond from the Information Regulator.